For more than 200 years now, the nation of Nepal has been a relatively peaceful and politically stable monarchy. In the past 15 years or so, a series of bloody and sometimes bizarre events have brought the country to the brink of chaos. The monarchy now looks set to be abolished entirely, and a communist insurgency, styling itself on China's Chairman Mao, may well hold the balance of power if politicians can ever decide on when and how to hold elections. I'm Taimur Nabili, and on this edition of 101 East we ask, is Nepal heading for democracy or further chaos? Despite the increasing political turmoil in Parliament, the streets of Kathmandu have remained relatively free of violence, and life here is carrying on much as normal. But there are increasing concerns about the reports coming from the south of the country. In the Terai region, dozens of deaths have been recorded amid talk of mounting political and ethnic clashes. CHOU reports.
Nepal, known as the Mountain Kingdom. Its past as a Hindu dynasty has been frozen in time by the architecture of places like the Patan Durbar Square. Today, more than 100 ethnic groups and castes make up Nepal's diverse population of 28 million people. However, at least 1 in 3 Nepalese are not from the hills but the southern Terai plains. Called Madeshis, these ethnic groups have extensive social-cultural ties with India. Every winter during the Chhat festival, some Terai communities worship the sun for giving life on earth and for fulfilling their wishes. For them, there's been a lot to wish for.
For decades and decades, plenty of people who live in the Terai, whose origin is there, have felt themselves not to be truly part of the state of Nepal. They feel that they're not looked on as equal citizens, and they point to all sorts of evidence of this, of exclusion from government jobs, of unequal development. That's been there for a long time.
In the past year, the police have been helpless against Terai rebel groups who say they are fighting state discrimination. The killing of dozens of people during this time has overshadowed a peace mission supported by the United Nations to help end a decade-long Maoist insurgency against the monarchy. The fight took nearly 13,000 lives. While the Maoists are supposed to have laid down their arms to enter mainstream politics, their breakaway groups are still active on the Terai plains. Dr. BARAN YADAV of the Nepali Congress, Nepal's largest political party, comes from Terai. He says some rebel groups are using politics as a cover for criminal activity.
Those who are politically fighting, then they should come to the table. And those who are the criminal element, then we'll have to decide, and the state should deal with that.
But the state has not been able to deal with it. Just months ago, parts of KAPILVASTU district were razed to the ground. The damage so bad, it's hard to say when rebuilding will finish. Common people bore the brunt of it as a spate of revenge and counter-revenge attacks were unleashed in the days that followed.
The carnage you see is a daily reminder of the violence that broke out in late September this year. Eyewitnesses say that in the initial mob that came here to burn things down and beat people up, there were no more than 30 men. What you don't see is that barely 500 meters down this road is the camp of the armed police force, which did nothing that day to quell the violence.
Eventually, more than 20 were killed. Thousands more became homeless and are still living in camps like this for displaced people. The Young Communist League, or YCL, is one of the groups suspected of having links with the perpetrators of the Terai turmoil. It's a wing of the Maoists, partly made up by its former militia. But they claim their 5,000 members in KAPILVASTU help to keep peace and improve people's lives.
Conservative forces like the feudal landowners want to maintain their political hold, so they support violence and protect criminals to scare the villagers and discourage them from politics. They also spread rumors to blame us for the mess in Terai.
An unstable Terai means Nepal will suffer because it is a region of strategic importance. Not only is Terai the main agricultural and industrial belt, it also has the only highway that links the length of the country. The dysfunction of the state in Terai has created a political vacuum, allowing different parties to jostle for influence.
What we are telling and what we are convincing every group, that now it is a democracy. Everybody have right now to form the party, to tell their plan and program for the nation, and to go together.
The consequences of Terai's unrest can be felt in capital Kathmandu, where political tension is brewing following the postponement of Constituent Assembly elections for a third time. The assembly will decide the country's future, one where ethnic minorities like the Madeshis will have better representation in the government. The latest elections were meant to happen in November this year, but the Maoists have been blamed for causing the delay by coming up with two new demands: the immediate abolition of the monarchy and a fully proportional voting system. Some say this is a delaying tactic after the Maoists realized they have little chance to do well in the elections.
From the Maoists' original agenda, the key promise that held appeal for people in the Terai region was that of decentralizing power, that the business of government is much harder to deal with and that you can't actually deliver instant change.
But things could go instantly wrong if scenes like these were to happen again. As recently as April last year, the Maoists joined the 7 mainstream parties to lead these protests and forced the king to relinquish power. Now, the former rebels threaten to return Nepal to chaos if the political stalemate goes on.
If the elections are not held, if solutions to its obstructions are not found, if our voices are suppressed, we will be forced to retaliate. We will lift our weapons again.
Nepal can scarcely afford to deal with more civil strife of that magnitude, strife that can only cause the situation in Terai to go downhill. From there, national reconciliation will be a task of Himalayan proportions.
For this edition of 101 East, we travel to Nepal's capital, Kathmandu. To take part in a debate about the country's future, we invited Dr. BABURAM, the second in command of the Maoists, and one of the main architects of the insurgency. Also with us, KANAK DIXIT, a prominent journalist in Nepal, as well as a political activist and publisher. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us on the show. Dr. BHATTARAI, I'll begin with you, if I might. The consensus in Nepal seems to be moving very strongly in the direction that you are close to ending your involvement in parliamentary politics. Is that right?
No, that's not true. Why we had to resort to people's war since 1996 was the parliamentary system introduced in 1990 didn't bring about substantial change in the life of the majority of the people. That's why we had to go for a revolt against that system. After 10 years of people's war, situation was changed, power balance was changed. So now we come back to build a new system, not the old mainstream. That's why we call it new mainstream. We're trying to create a new mainstream.
Let's talk specifically about the situation that Nepal finds itself in. The 22nd of November has come and gone without the arranged elections. The basis upon which those elections were supposed to be held appears to have disappeared entirely. The consensus that appeared to be there is no longer. And just a short while ago this afternoon I spoke to CHAKRA BASTOLA of the Congress Party and the former foreign minister, and he pinpointed what he saw as being the crucial problem here, and that is the constitution.
We just want the elections to be held as early as possible. We don't want to go into the amendment of the constitution, which is an interim constitution which has been amended a couple of times already, and if we go on for amending it, we'll come up with new problems, new set of problems. So there'll be no end to it.
His argument is that there is no point in trying again to rejig the constitution ahead of and instead of the agreed framework that existed. Does he have a point?
No, I am just coming from a meeting with the Prime Minister. Our chairman and a team of the Prime Minister party, including myself, had a very fruitful meeting. We still believe the peace process will continue, the unity of the seven party will continue, and we'll have a way out. There is no reason to be pessimistic. We are fully optimistic. Democracy will be institutionalized, okay. Republic will be institutionalized in Nepal.
Kanak, is the rest of the country quite so optimistic?
There is a trust deficit about the Communist Party of Nepal Maoist. The Nepali public at large would like to give a lot of space to the Maoists because they've given up their people's war. They've come into open politics, and right now they seem to have shifted goalposts for whatever reason within the Maoist party, we don't know. But suddenly the discourse is dire. The idea that there was an agreed framework to go to elections on the 22nd of November, and the entire country was waiting because we're a country with 100 mutinies. And it was very irresponsible for the Maoist party to, knowing all those mutinies ongoing, to suddenly to shift the goalpost to say the two agreed framework. One is on republic and monarchy, that the decision will be taken at the Constituent Assembly, the elected body of the Nepali people. Secondly, on the matter of proportional elections, there was supposed to be a mixed election.
We'll get on to the specifics that you mentioned in just a moment, but let me put the question to you that I just put to Dr. BHATTARAI, and that is it your opinion that the Communist Party Maoist is moving away from electoral politics? Its brief involvement seems to be...
To begin with, I don't think there is no way to move away. So we do not know what is the plan B if the Maoists are moving away. So my suggestion would be that there seems to be some kind of a division within the Maoists, that there is a radical wing that seems to want to take it in a certain direction. But on the other hand, no, I don't think the Maoists will abandon electoral politics, because that means going back to the jungle, and going back to the jungle is not an option, also because the Nepali people have already understood what a people's war is.
Is going back to the jungle an option? Your party leader has been in the newspapers in recent weeks saying that you are prepared to battle for 40 years. Are you prepared to go back into the jungle?
Yeah, definitely. Election is a part of the peace process. If the peace agreement is not adhered to, if the peace agreement is not implemented, if we are forced to go back to war again, we are prepared for that. Okay. Definitely. We are not ready to surrender, but we don't want to go war by our independent volition. But if we are forced to, we'll fight the war.
We'll pause just there for a minute and address that issue after the break. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with more conversation on 101 East.